Hello and welcome to this special show on Rajya Sabha television. I am Vishal Dahiya and here we take a stock of India's fight against COVID-19. Now, there's been a lot of talk about several drugs which have been repurposed in this battle against COVID pandemic. Obviously, the work on vaccines is also underway. But today we're going to talk about one such drug, that is Itolizumab, which has been repurposed by Biocon to help the doctors who are involved in treating the patients who are COVID positive. And what exactly does this drug does in terms of helping the patients out there? How and why was it repurposed in this battle against COVID-19? Some of these are the questions which we will try and answer in the next 25 odd minutes. And for this, we have with us a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. Sandeep Athalye. He is the Chief Medical Officer with Biocon. We also have with us Dr. Shashank Joshi. He is the Dean of Indian College of Physicians and is the one who is involved in that frontline battle against COVID-19. On the ground, we also have with us Dr. Vishwakarma. He is an advisor with the Center CSIR. Also, let us start the discussion with Dr. Sandeep. Dr. Sandeep, let us begin by trying to understand a bit more about this drug that is Itolizumab.
Thank you, Vishal. I can start by saying that Itolizumab is not a new drug. It is a drug that has been approved in India for the past 7 years. It was approved in 2013 for an indication called psoriasis, which is a skin disorder. And we had done phase 2, phase 3 trials and gotten that approval. In the past 7 years, it has been used in psoriasis. So we know about the mechanism of action, how this drug works. Now, in COVID patients, I think if you see what is really happening in those very sick patients who are actually dying, I think it is important to understand that it is not just the virus that is actually killing it. It is the body's hyperimmune response to that virus which is killing the patients. And I think this mechanism, once we understood that there is a role for Itolizumab to play in this kind of a situation. So if you think about patients who are really sick going on ventilator, and the body's immune response is actually the one that is causing more harm, that is the place where Itolizumab could play a role. And that's why we were interested in testing it out in a trial, and we have done a trial for the approval itself.
Okay, and then how does Itolizumab work actually with COVID-19 patients? As to since this is a drug for skin disorders,
Right.
So how does it help the COVID-19 patients?
Right. So Itolizumab is an anti-CD6 antibody, monoclonal antibody, and anti-CD6 is a molecule that actually helps in activation of the T cells. So there are T cells are the white blood cells that actually fight the virus, and when there is activation of these T cells in the body, sometimes the hyperactivation causes a cytokine storm. There is a release of all these cytokines in the body, and this release of these cytokines actually causes tissue damage, organ damage, and even clotting in the blood. And that is the result of much of mortality that we are seeing. So Itolizumab, by blocking CD6 molecule, the receptor itself avoids this activation and the cascade of events that happens. So it prevents the cytokine storm that happens in these patients.
Okay, but how did you guys, end up, focusing on this particular drug to be repurposed? Obviously, you guys did some tests as well, but then how and why?
So it is about understanding. You need to have a deep understanding of how this product works. And actually, in the early part of COVID, we did not know. We were thinking about it as a virus, it is causing pneumonia. That was the understanding of how these patients are getting sick. I think over time, we understood that it is some other things are going wrong in terms of hyperinflammation, and it is the body's response that is actually causing. And this deep understanding of how this drug works made us think that there is a purpose for this drug in COVID-19 as well, in this specific subset of patients.
Okay. Let me bring in Dr. Ram Vishwakarma here. Dr. Vishwakarma, your views on Itolizumab, because this is again one of those repurposed drugs. Obviously, there is no specific cure for COVID-19 so far, but based on the symptoms and how the body's defense mechanism works, this is one of those drugs, again, some of them which we have already discussed with you here on this particular show. So how would you look at Itolizumab here?
Yeah, mechanistically it looks very interesting because it's looking at CD6 mechanism in co-stimulation T cells, so it will certainly help the cytokine sort of upregulation that is happening in the patients and the damage, multi-organ damage that is happening. So that's one aspect very interesting. If we compare this with other competitor monoclonal antibodies, this is a new mechanism of action through which we are looking at this. So from that point of view, it's interesting. The important aspect with this drug would be what time it is used. It can do harm and it can do benefit, the way I'm looking at it. So if you look at 15-day window and look at the first week when viral replication at the highest level, where immune system is trying to protect you, it may not be that useful in that phase. But once it goes into the second week, which is what we call a very aggressive, overhyped immune system, it will certainly, because of the common mechanism which drives several pro-inflammatory cytokines, rather than looking at IL-6 separately, IL-1 beta separately, if I compare with the Tocilizumab, the other antibody, which is IL-6 from Genentech, Roche. So this is actually looking at pro-inflammatory cytokine comprehensively. That's one aspect. But having said that, the concern that has been raised about this trial and approval is that it is a very limited trial, statistically not that powered. So I think we have to wait to see how it performs actually in the clinic, because it's done on 20 patients, 20 odd patients, and or in the control arm, 10 patients or something. So there are some issues about the statistical significance of the benefit that is derived. But I think that the time that we are living in, it's a good news, and let us see where it goes to clinic. It actually clinicians use it, and then we will see the real benefit of it. So it's a very important development, but we need to wait for because of the size of the trial. We need to wait for actually when it goes to clinic, the way it is happening with remdesivir and favipiravir also, because there are two opinions now among clinicians. That people are preferring more dexamethasone kind of study, which is large study, fully controlled, and clinicians feel more comfortable using that rather than remdesivir and favipiravir. So I think that situation we have to wait for a couple of weeks when clinician actually started. Mechanistically, it's a very interesting idea. And instead of looking at one cytokine at a time, they are looking at a center point of cytokine activation.
Okay. We'll bring Dr. Sandeep as well on those points, but let me first bring in Dr. Shashank here, who is involved on the ground in this fight against COVID-19. Dr. Shashank, your initial views on Itolizumab.
Oh, I think I agree with Dr. Ram and Dr. Sandeep completely. This is a novel agent, but it should not be used in the first 7 or 10 days when the virus is being replicated. After that, when the immune storm or the lung storm or the cytokine storm kicks in, this is the right time to use this drug. And if you use it at an appropriate juncture, it clears up the storm. So on compassionate grounds, off-label, we have used it outside the trial. And if we have used it at the right time, usually on day 10, day 12, then actually it has cleared up the storm and reduced the need for oxygen, reduced the need for ventilation, and even saved lives. So this has a life-saving potential. It has a lot of promise. It has a very unique mechanism of action. But as I said, we need to have more data. Off-label, we have confidence that this drug works. And actually what happened with this drug is it came at a time when tocilizumab was actually more or less out of stock. So we actually as clinicians had the opportunity of use this drug in an off-label component. And if we give the infusion very IV slowly, actually a single dose of this drug actually reduces the need of oxygen. Is the patients by third to fifth day are able to ambulate, and many patients who are also on ventilator, this comes down fast. I also agree with Dr. Ram Vishwakarma that in ventilated patients we prefer dexamethasone because it has a outcome trial called recovery trial which has shown its benefit. But just before ventilator, when a deteriorating patient who is needing more than 4 liters of oxygen, that is the right time to use this drug after maybe 7 to 10 days. By the time the virus replication has come down and the immune response has set up. So our clinical criteria for using this drug is increasing need of oxygen, deteriorating patient after giving them a pulse steroid for 24 hours, and patient not being ventilated, catching them at the right window, at the right time for the right patient, it can truly be life saving. And I'm sure I would urge my friend Dr. Sandeep from Biocon to do a larger trial on maybe 200 patients, 300 patients, because we have patients where we clearly see a clear cut benefit. Also, it is more economical. Being a make in India, made in India compound, biologics and monoclonal antibodies are not very easy to make. And every day we can save the patient from ventilator actually is a cost saved. And every life of COVID patient which we save, because today our strategy is save lives and try to reduce the mortality below 1%. And that is something this drug has a potential to do. And as data will emerge and as we will see more use of this drug, we are confident. But currently, whatever we have used it in Mumbai, we are quite confident. Our clinical group is quite confident that this has a potential benefit if used in the right patient at the right time.
Okay, so there is a potential if used in the right patient at the right stage. That is what very, very important here. But another important aspect, as both Dr. Ram Vishwakarma and Dr. Shashank pointed out, is the need to have a much larger trials. So, Dr. Sandeep, would you agree with both the gentlemen here that there is a need to go ahead and do trials on a large spectrum here? Limited trials is one of the areas of concern as far as Itolizumab is concerned.
Yeah, so Vishal, thanks for asking that question. I think this is also a concern about with many others online. Let me start by saying that there are some approved products. If you think of approved products in India or in the US, for example, there is a mechanism called as a EUA, or it's called Emergency Use Authorization. And in India, we have restricted emergency use. So these are synonymous to each other. The way the regulators see this is, if this drug is there existing for 7 years in the market and we have plenty of data in patients, the safety of this product is ascertained in large number of patients already. And I think so if you evaluate this product in terms of, is it safe? Yes, it is safe. Based on mechanism, is it working? Yes, in a smaller study in 30 patients, we have shown that it has very good results. Actually, for the size of the trial, it is a big effect size that we have seen. And yes, I agree with both gentlemen here that there is a need for a larger phase 4 trial, and we have a commitment to the DCGI as well to do this trial, and we will be starting that very soon. In the next 10 days, I think we will announce that. So yes, the mechanism is meant for existing products that have been proven safe to be tried in these emergency uses. I think every government, every regulator is looking at emergency use authorization or restricted use authorization to save lives, because there is no other option available today. And I think if you look at the FDA way, how they have approved some of their approved products in the US, and example is hydroxychloroquine, for example, right? Remdesivir is not even a good example because remdesivir is an investigational product. It is not even approved in any indication. But even hydroxychloroquine, there were no trials done based on anecdotal reports like that they received from small subsets of patients. They have approved these products, and this is restricted for the use for COVID. And I think a larger trial has to prove it. And I agree with the experts here that this we will be proving in a larger number of. So we are coming up with our 200 patient trial.
Okay, so the larger trial is definitely needed, and obviously your company is working on that. One more question here, Dr. Sandeep, is in terms of have any of the tests so far, obviously the tests have been conducted on a smaller group of patients, but have they shown any side effects vis-a-vis its use with the COVID-19 patients? And if yes, what are they?
So basically, I think we did not find any new side effects that we had not known before. So the two notable side effects that we were concerned of based on the mechanism, where in some patients you see infusion reactions. That means that when it is infused, you see chills and rigors. And in COVID patients which are decompensated already, because their lungs are not fully functional, that was a concern. So I think, as Dr. Shashank mentioned, I mean, when it is given over 6 to 8 hours as a very slow infusion, we have made sure that we have seen that there are no patients actually responding in that fashion. The incidence of infusion reactions has come down drastically. So that was one. And the second one was basically based on the mechanism of action. We were concerned whether this would actually reduce the lymphocyte counts. And that was something we closely studied in these patients. And what we had learned from that is that was not a concern. Clinically, it is not relevant. These counts did not come down drastically, which became a concern, as Dr. Ram mentioned, whether that actually inhibits the ability of the body to fight the virus. And that was our concern as well. And that was ruled out because we did not see that happening. But again, I would reiterate that this drug has to be given in the right patients at the right time.
Definitely, right patients at the right time and restricted emergency use as well. But Dr. Shashank, do you agree with Dr. Sandeep on the side effects part there, since you're using it on the ground there, clinically giving it to the patients?
Yes, I absolutely agree with him that if you give the infusion very IV and slowly with a little bit of, anti-allergic medications, if it is given over 6 hours, there is absolutely no side effect. And you get a transient dip in the lymphocyte count, which picks up after 24 to 48 hours. So that is something which we have seen very clearly. So it has a game-changing potential. It is economical. It's a monoclonal antibody from India, and one more country has done trials. So this is not the only trial. I read up recently yesterday night because I was coming on this show, Vishal, in Cuba, and I want Sandeep, if you could illustrate me. In Cuba, they have done a larger trial, and actually they have saved a lot of lives in Cuba. So we should not dismiss Cuba. Cuba has been once upon a time a biotech mecca, and they have been able to do a lot of biological products. So could you share with us and did you all supply Cuba the molecule? Because I saw that there was a larger sample size in Cuba. Then this is it's a preprint. Nowadays before it goes for publications, people put them on a preprint, and I think the publication is going to be out today or tomorrow. And that was very interesting. And I'm going to share that paper with Dr. Ram Vishwakarma also, who's my good friend. And I think that looks a very robust data. Again, in Cuba, as Dr. Ram said, and I'm saying, the drug was used in the appropriate time. They had used the drug between 8 to 12 a day, and none of the patients actually needed ventilator. So I think that is the right time is the key for this molecule. It can clearly be a lung clearing or calming the storm mechanism for this drug.
Okay. One more aspect, here, since you mentioned it, Dr. Shashank, let me bring in Dr. Ram here on that. Obviously, he would want to respond to the points made by you. But in addition to that, Dr. Ram, as Dr. Shashank said, does this drug also make the entire treatment cost effective? Something which obviously is an important aspect which all of us are looking at right now.
Yeah, so eventually, I think I don't know what is the pricing company is offering, but eventually, I think they will make sure that it is made affordable to people. And obviously, in view of the number of patients that will require this drug, if we compare that number of people who have got infected, so you see mild and moderate and severe, this fraction will be a very subset of the people who will actually require this. So I think keeping in view the specific need and the window of use of this drug, I'm not really very overtly concerned about whether it will be too expensive to be used. So I think compared to cost of remdesivir, which is another pill or IV drug. So I think that issue will be. I think I'm sure Biocon has a track record of providing these things. They have a good experience in providing transplant medicine at very affordable cost in India, which is I think cheapest in the world. If you look at that, I think Dr. Joshi will concur with me. So I'm sure they will take care of this making available.
Okay, Dr. Sandeep, is it cost effective?
Yes, absolutely. I think if you look at the tocilizumab dosing itself, you need basically in 2 doses of tocilizumab on day 1 and day 2. And what we have seen predominantly most patients, about 80-90% of the patients only need 1 dose of itolizumab. 1 vial of itolizumab is 8,000 rupees at the moment. So you can imagine a patient needing almost 4 vials as a single dose, and that would be around 32,000 rupees. So I think that is one. I think we have to also look at in a different context. If you don't give this drug, most patients in 2 to 3 days have a potential to go in ICU and go on a ventilator, and the cost of being on a ventilator, cost of being in an ICU is also to be looked at. So I think from a pharmacoeconomic standpoint, if you look at it broadly, I think this drug is cheaper, I would say. And
Okay,
can,
okay. That's obviously one important aspect there, the cost as far as the entire treatment cycle is concerned. Dr. Shashank, one last question here would be, I would like to have your views on Itolizumab vis-a-vis other repurposed drugs which are present right now in the market in the treatment of COVID-19. Obviously, none of them is a specific cure for COVID-19, symptomatic, and the way patients respond as well depends on that. Most of them are restricted emergency use as well. But how would you look at all these drugs, including Itolizumab, and where would you place Itolizumab vis-a-vis all these drugs?
So let us start with the antivirals. With the antivirals, the first repurposed drug is hydroxychloroquine. In pre-exposure prophylaxis, it works. I have taken it every week. So clearly it has a role in pre-exposure prophylaxis. Let us look at the favipiravir and remdesivir. Both are repurposed. Favipiravir is used in flu in Japan. It works if it is given in the first 3 to 5 days. Needs like Itolizumab to generate more data and a proper randomized control trial to show the viral clearance by 5th or 6th day, the way they did in Japan. Japanese trial is still not published. Chinese trials I don't trust, and Russia has approved it. But favipiravir has to be used in the first 3 days. Maybe after 5 to 10th day, when patient is in the hospital, remdesivir has a role. Again, we need to generate Indian data. It is a very good repurposed drug from Ebola to COVID, and this is the antiviral group. So I would class them as antiviral group. We are also investigating a cheap drug called doxycycline with ivermectin in combination. And again, it is being repurposed. Our data I cannot disclose here, but that also will be out. So that is from the antiviral class. After 8 to 10 days have passed, the viral replication has come down and an immune response has been triggered. Then we need the repurposed drugs to handle the immunity. There we have two options. The one which we have been using is tocilizumab, and that is expensive. That is, as Dr. Vishwakarma said, a genetic horse product, and that has not also got data in India and abroad, but it's a repurposed drug. It's a rheumatoid arthritis drug which is being used. It is almost 3 times the cost of the itolizumab, and that is the space where probably itolizumab has a clear role because it has a larger action. It is not just IL-6. It is actually a broader immunological window, which I'm sure Dr. Ram Vishwakarma can explain you, and therefore it is having a huge potential of the drug. And later, once the patient is mechanically ventilated, and even when the patient is needing oxygen and deteriorating, we have a clear role for two steroids. One is IV methylprednisolone, second is
Okay.
dexamethasone. Now, dexamethasone has a challenge because when you give it with remdesivir, there's a drug interaction. So many a times we have to use methylprednisolone. So we interchange between the two, but both are equally effective because both are steroids. At the end of the day, if one works, other is likely to work because it's just a formula, a chemical formula by which we can exchange the steroid mechanism. I think that's where I'll stop.
Okay, let's have quick concluding comments from Dr. Ram Vishwakarma also, because Dr. Ram, you've been with us on this particular show talking about several other drugs as well and other trials also. So your views on all these repurposed drugs and where would you place Itolizumab in this entire spectrum of repurposed drugs which are there present with us right now in this fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, so I mean, we have discussed with you almost 3 months ago, and I said at that point that we don't have to be overtly worried about this. The state of science is such today that science will eventually find solution to this. And I think we have very systematically moved in that direction, and we are not helpless situation today. And I consider this introduction of the CD6 antibody is additional tool in the hand of clinician to really saving lives. That's the most important component of this. So I would say that I look forward to having larger trial data, published data, so that not only India, it goes to the globe. I think this will be the first biologic discovered and developed in India going to the globe. It's another landmark for our country. I think that barrier we must cross. This is one molecule which is close to crossing that barrier.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ram, Dr. Shashank, and Dr. Sandeep here for sharing your views with us and our viewers on Itolizumab, which again is one more repurposed drug which has been brought into the domain to go ahead and fight against COVID-19. The focus, as our panelists are pointing out, is to save lives. And obviously, Itolizumab, like some other drugs, is for restricted emergency use in the later stages for COVID-19 patients. Obviously, a bit more work is required, and that is where the more trials or more data will be collated, and we will continue to bring all those details to you. So keep watching Rajya Sabha television, and please do not forget to wear face mask when you step out of your houses, because the battle against COVID-19 is still on. Thank you.